We won't untie you unless you promise to do a tutorial on watercolour pencils.
Anything but that.
Good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. I'm Paul Clark and welcome to my studio. Now, it is true, whenever the subject of watercolour pencils come up, I've been, shall we say, a little bit disparaging and I've not really seen the point of them. But I know lots of you love them and use them all the time, and I've had loads of requests for tutorials. So what I thought I'd do was a watercolour showdown, comparing pencils to watercolour paint. So we've got two lovely birds of prey. This eagle owl, done purely in watercolour pencil, and this Harris hawk, done in the conventional watercolour. So to be fair, I have done my research, I've done lots of practicing, and I've even bought quite a decent quality set of watercolour pencils. And if you stick through to the end, we've got some lovely birds of prey from the Facebook group. So come and join me and we'll paint these step by step together. So with watercolour pencils, we mustn't get them confused with coloured pencils or pencil crayons, which are usually wax or oil based and is a whole different art form altogether. Or pastel pencils, which are much more opaque and have a chalky feel to them. Now I love to use them over dry finish watercolour for adding in those lighter value details. Now you can see if you paint water over the crayons and the pastel pencils, you will get some smudging, but the watercolour pencils, being water soluble, will blend very much like ordinary watercolour paint. So let's get going with this lovely eagle owl reference photo from Pixabay. Okay, so for today's materials, my paper is some Bockingford cold press, £250. My watercolour pencils are purple, black, burnt umber, yellow ochre, and the very creatively named brown and orange. And just two brushes from my range, a number 6 and number 12 round. Okay, so I'm starting with a standard HB pencil and sketching in the basic shape, even adding in a little shading to help me see those dark areas. As always, the drawing template is free to download from my website. Link in the description below. Next, with my purple, I'm sketching in fairly loosely the background and then just adding in a touch of yellow ochre. Next, I'm taking a fairly wet brush, just clean water, and blending out the colours. Now, because I'm using a cold pressed textured paper, it's difficult to get a totally smooth blend, but that's not a problem. I quite like the textured effect. Now, using hot press smoother paper should give you a more even, softer blend. Then, if you need some more colour, you can simply take directly off the pencil. And here I'm adding more pigment directly onto a wet wash. Next, with the owl himself, I'm taking a yellow ochre pencil and very loosely sketching in the feathers, making sure they all flow in the direction of the growth of the feathers. Now, on this cold pressed paper, the points tend to blunt very quickly, so I bought this rather snappy little electric sharpener. Wonderful. Now, I know a lot of people who use watercolour pencils will use them in conjunction with a traditional approach, adding in details later on to a finished watercolour. But to give them a proper try, I thought I would only use watercolour pencils for the complete work. So next I'm simply building up the colour with some browns and oranges, again keeping the flow and the direction. And now with the important black detail. Okay, so now I'm ready with my number 12 brush to soften and blend the pencil work. But I want to keep some of that pencil texture to give that lovely feathery effect, so I'm just going fairly carefully. Adding in and building up a little more detail. Now for those amazing orange eyes. And I'm coming here very solid and hard with the pencil, getting as much pigment down as possible. And here with a little burnt umber for the shadows above. Here I'm just softening and blending with my number 6 brush. And adding in here just a little more orange into his coat. Now for all the black, I'm having to press fairly hard onto the paper to get this strong application. Lots of short dabby strokes here for this pattern in his crown, if that's what it's called. And again here, this time with my number 6 brush, I'm softening and blending and always adding in more water to get those softer blends. More pigment needed, just pick up from the pencil. Now, it's often been said that one of the advantages of watercolour pencils over a brush is you can get much finer lines for things such as fur and feathers. Now, I would disagree here, as you can get much more natural strokes with a brush, but I'm going to be sticking to the pencils for this one. Back to the wet brush again. Some more final little textures with the pencil. Now, one thing I've just thought, that if you use watercolour pencils regularly, you must get through them fairly quickly. Now, this black is nearly 30% gone already. Although I do note that you can buy them individually at very reasonable prices. And I can also use my usual technique of softening and blending a few areas with a damp tissue. Now, I've noticed some of the lighter colours are opaque enough to show directly on top of the darker values. Nowhere as opaque as pastel pencils, but they do work. Now, talking of opaque, I'm going to finish off with some white gouache for a few little highlights and details, which really helps to bring it to life. There we go, all done. Quite good fun, that. Okay, so now it's time for a short break. And what about a glass of, yes, believe it or not, Eagle Owl Polish Double IPA. Now, to be honest, this isn't it, because I couldn't get my hands on it. So we'll just pretend. Next we have the Harris Hawk, this time in traditional watercolour. And here's the beautiful reference photograph. Okay, and the materials for the second demo. Again, my paper is some Bockingford cold press, £250. My colours, kindly supplied by Jackman's Art Materials for me to try out, are some Cadmium Yellow, Yellow Ochre, Burnt Sienna, Alizarin Crimson, French Ultramarine, Cerulean Blue and Payne's Grey, and some white gouache. Just 3 brushes from my range, a 3/4 inch flat, a number 12 and a number 6 round. A pencil drawing here, and again free to download from my website. So I'm starting by wetting opposite corners with clean water, as I want some of the bird to be against a white background. And I'm just going to splash in with my flat brush some Cerulean Blue and a touch of French Ultramarine. But please feel free to use any colours you like. And here I'm just dropping in a little yellow ochre. Next, I'm wetting the bird, as I want to make sure all my colours flow and blend. Next, using my number 12 brush and some Cadmium Yellow, and then dropping in a touch of Burnt Sienna. Next, this is a brown mix of Burnt Sienna and French Ultramarine with just a touch of Alizarin Crimson. And I'm adding in more of the blue and more of the red to vary the colour. And this is where paint has a huge advantage over the pencils. It's so much easier to mix your colours to get exactly the colour you want, and they merge so much better on the paper. It's going back to what I was saying earlier, watercolour pencils are probably best when used together with paint. While still damp, and simply lifting out with a dry brush these light areas. So while this wash is still damp, I'm dropping in wet in wet a stronger consistency of the same brown colour. And here, for a bit of contrast, some wet in wet French Ultramarine, and now a little Payne's Grey. Okay, so for a few Harris hawk facts if you're interested. Sometimes known as the Dusky or wolf hawk, this bird was originally to be found in Latin America, and later in Western Europe, especially in Great Britain, where they are very popular for falconry, due to their high intelligence. So numbers have likely grown from those escaped from captivity. Now, another interesting fact is about 15 years ago, one appeared at the top of a tree in our garden, where it stayed for about 2 days. Now, my late wife tried to coax it down by swinging a chicken leg around her head on a long piece of string. Now, I can report it had absolutely no effect whatsoever, and later just flew away. A little more Cadmium Yellow around the eye. And for his beak, this is a mix of French Ultramarine and Payne's Grey. Now a colour I forgot to mention at the beginning, but this is a little Cadmium Orange. Now for the very important bit, his eye. And here I'm using Cadmium Orange again. And I just love that little touch of French Ultramarine along the top of his eye. It's obviously a bit of reflection from the sky. And now it's those dark value details of Payne's grey which really start to pull the whole thing together. So here are a few bits I missed out around the eye, so I'm using a yellow pastel pencil to retrieve some of these details. And of course, just like on the owl, a few white details with some white gouache to give that lovely bit of sparkle. There we go, all done. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did and you'd give them both a go. So, my conclusion on the watercolour showdown with pencils and paint. Now, this is my opinion only. Now, what I would say is, did I enjoy using them? Yes, definitely. Are they useful? Can they be used in conjunction with a traditional watercolour? Yes, definitely. Are they really convenient and handy for taking away, if you're painting outdoors? Yes, definitely. But for me, I can honestly say that I can't think of one thing that you can't do better with a brush and traditional paint. And that's just me. But I would thoroughly recommend that you give them a try if you haven't already. They are great fun. So hang about now. We've got some beautiful paintings of birds of prey from the Facebook group. And as always, please don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't already. It really does help. Leave a comment. I do read every single one. I just can't reply to them all. And of course, I look forward to seeing you all again next week for another Watercolour Wednesday. So take care, everyone. Cheers now.